250,000. That's the number of high-speed police pursuits that occur every year in the United States. No other country on Earth comes even remotely close. According to the California Highway Patrol, only 57.6% of the fleeing suspects were apprehended, leaving 42.4% of suspects to successfully evade arrest, and that number is only growing. A huge contributing factor to these successful high-speed evasions is the ever-increasing gap of outright top speed and performance of suspect vehicles when compared to the run-of-the-mill patrol vehicle. There's a common theme amongst these seemingly uncatchable cars, though, a sort of recipe that makes them an absolute pain for law enforcement to catch. These ingredients don't consist of an ostentatious bright red Ferrari. Rather, the best getaway cars are those that can balance brutal acceleration, ridiculous top speed, and inconspicuous looks that only a trained eye can distinguish from a normal commuter. And they even have a name for it thanks to the British, who almost banned their very existence. On this episode of Explained, sponsored by Surfshark, we will take a deep dive into the rise of the super saloon and how it became the preferred method to evading authorities around the world. Historically, where you find organized crime, you will also find fast automobiles used to evade authorities. The 18th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which began the Prohibition era of the 20s and early 30s, made the manufacturing, sale, and transportation of intoxicating liquors illegal, which gave rise to bootleggers who transported moonshine from rural parts of Appalachia and imported liquors from Canada with hot-rodded vehicles to evade law enforcement. Their specialty was the Ford Model 18, which was more expensive and nearly identical to the Ford Model B used by law enforcement, but ditched the meager 50 horsepower inline four-cylinder for a flathead V8 that produced a healthier 65 horsepower and later up to 85 horsepower. According to bootleggers at the time, it was fast enough to stay one step ahead of the law, rugged enough for the mountain roads, and had a big enough trunk and back seat to squeeze in moonshine. This clear advantage of power, cargo space, and durability, combined with a skilled driver, made the Ford Model 18 the desired getaway car amongst moonshiners and bootleggers, and even bank robbers like Bonnie and Clyde. This recipe of a bare-bones four-door sedan with a higher output power plant, a heavy-duty suspension, and braking components would be emulated by Ford and Chevrolet into police packages and sold directly to departments across the country. The 1954 two-door and four-door, for example, was offered with a police package that included an exclusive engine, the Interceptor engine, with more displacement than the standard flathead V8. The clutch, the alternator, the oil pan, the battery, and even the tires were beefed up to withstand 24-hour duty and became a hit amongst veteran drivers and police officials. By 1956, General Motors and the Chrysler Corporation would follow suit, offering specialized police equipment packages, and sparked an unofficial arms race across the Big Three to build faster and faster police cars. Dodge would end the arms race with their own super saloon disguised as a police car in 1968, the Dodge Polara Pursuit. These were ordered by the California Highway Patrol with the E86 engine code, which meant the 440 cubic inch wedge V8, a 4-barrel carburetor, a special camshaft grind, dual exhaust, and 375 horsepower and 480 pound-feet of torque. The 3.23 rear axle ratio hindered some acceleration performance, but gave the Polara Pursuit a 149.6 mile/hour top speed, which was recorded at Chrysler's test facility in Chelsea, Michigan. The 440 wedge wasn't the most powerful offering from Chrysler. That would have been the NASCAR-winning 426 Hemi, but the 440 Magnum wedge combined with the lower axle ratio meant even the most powerful muscle cars at the time couldn't outrun the Polara speed capabilities. This philosophy of brutally fast and high-tech for the time police cruisers wasn't adopted universally around the world, especially in the United Kingdom. British police cars were smaller, more nimble, and less elaborately equipped than their American counterparts, and preferred manual gearboxes versus the slushy automatics.
Occasionally, though, a special car is needed for a special job. Bedfordshire decided the only weapon to win the joyriding war was the 150-mile-an-hour Cosworth Sierra.
The narrow British roads, combined with the parking space limitations and higher tax on fuel, made the American recipe of a big V8 four-door patrol car unideal for police work. That would all change with the rise of super saloons in Europe. BMW had their E34 chassis code M5. A hand-assembled saloon born in BMW's motorsports facility outside of Munich and powered by a dual overhead cam naturally aspirated inline-six with individual throttle bodies and north of 300 horsepower. Mercedes had their wolf in sheep's clothing with the 500e, which was also hand-built and co-engineered with Porsche and was propelled by a 5-liter dual overhead cam V8 designated as the M119. These brutes were stolen at alarming rates, and they became the tool of choice for jewelry heists and ram raids across Britain in the 90s. One specific model became literally uncatchable by authorities, and it wasn't a BMW nor a Mercedes, rather an amalgamation between General Motors and their recently acquired Lotus Engineering, known as the Type 104, or better known as the Lotus Carlton. These cars began as a 3000 GSI Vauxhall Carlton or Opel Omega off the production line and shipped to Lotus Engineering to be intensely modified. The inline-six received a longer stroke forged steel crankshaft, increasing the displacement from 3 liters to 3.6 liters, and ditched the natural aspiration for twin Garrett T25 turbochargers. The forged moly pistons reduced compression from 10.0 to 1 down to 8.2 to 1 to account for the increased cylinder pressure since it was now boosted. The output increased from an already healthy 201 brake horsepower up to 377 brake horsepower. It had wider fenders and bodywork, enormous ventilated disc brakes, a limited slip differential, and only offered with a 6-speed manual from the Lotus Engineering ZR1 Corvette. The car wasn't made famous by its Ferrari Testarossa-like speed or Porsche 911 Turbo rivaling technology, but rather a gang of ram raiders making a fool out of police in a stolen Imperial Green example. It was stolen on November 26, 1993 from a home in Worcestershire with the registration plate 40RA, and over the course of months was involved in multiple robberies totaling 20,000 British pounds in merchandise, and it couldn't be caught since the Austin Maestro Panda cars used by the police topped at 90 miles per hour, while the Lotus Carlton could achieve 177 miles per hour on the M6 motorway. The Lotus Carlton was simply uncatchable, untouchable, and unprecedented. Well, almost uncatchable. See, while many say the 40RA was never caught, it actually was in January '94 by passersby spotting it in a canal with its dark green paint and a caved-in roof and the registration plate 40RA. The leading publication at the time, the Daily Mail, and even British Parliament condemned the car and called for its banishment in Britain. But luckily it was so expensive and sold so poorly that it would be discontinued before it could be sent to the shadow realm. Similar to the infamous Lotus Carlton of the 90s, today's sponsor Surfshark can make you literally uncatchable. Surfshark is a VPN or virtual private network that encrypts all your internet traffic, meaning all your unique personal data like passwords, bank logins, messages, multimedia are all protected from cyber criminals, which is extremely important if you use public Wi-Fi in airports and coffee shops, something I'm always doing. It also can swap your device's IP address to over 100 different country locations, which gives you access to geo-locked content on streaming services. Currently on Netflix, one of my favorite TV series, Rick and Morty, isn't available for US residents. It literally says, "We don't have Rick and Morty." But if I open up the Surfshark application, change my location to the United Kingdom, it takes literally around 3 seconds, connect, and boom, I'm watching Rick and Morty. Surfshark's encryption is an impenetrable anti-theft system for your device, something that the Lotus Carlton should have had to keep those would-be ram raiders at bay, but then we wouldn't have such a legendary story to tell. The awesome folks at Surfshark have cooked up a smoking deal for everybody. If you use the code SPEED or click the link in the description, you'll get 3 months free, and if you don't like it before the 30-day trial, there's always a money-back guarantee, so there's absolutely no risk to try it out. Back in the States, the super saloon explosion in the late 90s to early 2000s was slow to reach American manufacturers. Body-on-frame, solid rear axle, high-performance sedans like the Impala SS with its Corvette LT1 small block were essentially a 9C1 Chevy Caprice police car in civilian attire. The Mercury Marauder and its more sophisticated dual red cam modular V8 from the Mustang Mach-1 was a more impressive version of the Crown Victoria Police Interceptor, but still very reminiscent of its police car DNA. They didn't outclass their law enforcement counterparts by much of a margin, not until Dodge would reintroduce the Charger in 2006 on the Chrysler LX chassis. Law enforcement agencies quickly flocked to the Charger Pursuit package as it was more stable at high speeds than the Crown Victoria or Caprice, given its Mercedes E-Class engineered independent rear suspension, and offered a 5.7-liter Gen 3 Hemi V8 from the Road and Track or RT trim of the civilian Charger that made 340 horsepower, and a Mercedes 5-speed automatic which gave it a 150-mile-per-hour top speed, finally eclipsing the 1969 Polara Pursuit after nearly 4 decades. Alongside the Road and Track-based Pursuit, the SRT8 or Street and Racing Technology variant was available to the civilian market only, which completely outclassed the Pursuit Charger. The 6.1-liter Hemi was in essence a hot-rodded 5.7-liter Hemi with a laundry list of upgrades like its stronger cast iron block, larger bore diameter, a forged steel crankshaft, higher compression from 9.6 up to 10.2 to 1, more aggressive camshaft grind, and cylinder heads that flowed exceptionally for a pushrod design. The new Hemi power plant gave 85 more reasons why it was the go-to super saloon, and thieves would quickly catch on. Older cars before the mid-90s were commonly the victim of thieves since the only anti-theft system was door locks and a keyed ignition lock cylinder. Thieves would bypass the ignition lock cylinder and complete the circuit to the ignition, giving power to the ECU and the starter motor without the need of a key. Newer cars like the SRT8 Charger have a transponder in the key that is coded specifically to the car's anti-theft computer. Even if the car is hot-wired, the anti-theft computer locks the ECU from firing the injectors and spark plugs, rendering the car unstartable and useless. This eliminated random low-level thefts, but then became a target for specialized criminals who knew how to exploit the security system. Thieves would carry blank uncoded keys and key programming computers. From there, they would program a new key after entering the special security code, and within a minute or so, they were off with the SRT8. According to the National Insurance Crime Bureau, the most popular model year of Charger thefts were the 2006, the first model year that came out, and police pursuits began to rise as criminals are more likely to evade police than giving up, especially while already in a stolen vehicle. The supremacy of the Charger as the go-to getaway car would only get more and more ingrained as the years progressed. The SRT engines got consistently more powerful, going from a 6.1-liter Hemi to a 6.4-liter Hemi. Even higher trim models like the Hellcat introduced a 6.2-liter Hemi with a 2.4-liter twin-screw supercharger, making 707 horsepower, and later getting a bigger 2.7-liter supercharger and 797 horsepower. All the while, the Pursuit Charger kept the standard 5.7-liter Hemi, and while it did get a power bump from 340 to 370 horsepower, it was completely outclassed by the SRT variants used by getaway drivers. Another overlooked quality of the Charger was that the V6 GT trim, a 5.7-liter Daytona, a 6.4-liter Scat Pack, a 6.2-liter supercharged Hellcat, and even the 800 horsepower Red Eye looked identical, helping them blend in with similar traffic and much harder to apprehend if law enforcement ever lost the line of sight. These advantages would be exploited to monumental proportions in an infamous black Dodge Charger in May of 2022. Trooper Jacob Bird began pursuit of a black Dodge Charger that was speeding in a residential neighborhood in Little Rock, Arkansas, and as soon as the chase began, it was over. The Charger was gone. 45 minutes later, it was spotted by Trooper Alan Johnson a couple miles east on the Wilbur D. Mills Freeway and would escape again. 3 months later in August, Trooper Spencer Morris spotted the Charger racing down the highway on the Tennessee-Arkansas border, but the Charger blacked out its taillights and the skilled driver got away once more.
1037, 540, eastbound. It's a white Dodge Charger. He's blacked out. Light traffic.
A month later, on September 4th, Trooper Quincy Harris tried chasing the infamous Charger in south of Little Rock, Arkansas, but was dusted as soon as it started. Suspecting the Charger, even though it's cladded in RT trim, it most likely had a modified Hemi engine or could even be an SRT Hellcat with RT body cladding to fool the police. Two weeks later, on the same highway as the second pursuit in May, the black Charger would toy with the police, purposefully pulling over for a traffic stop, and as soon as Trooper Monte Hernandez touched the back of the car, he was gone. As many as 14 chases later, and even a recent encounter in October of 2023, this Charger hasn't been caught and probably never will. The Blackout Charger is in essence America's RA40 Lotus Carlton, a car that was uncatchable for its era, and getting within 100 feet of it is because the driver let you. Both were built on very common saloons of their time, one modified by Lotus Engineering to be the world's fastest saloon, and one most likely modified in his garage to evade law enforcement for shits and giggles. While the RA40 Carlton's legendary existence came to an end in 1994, the Blackout Charger is still alive, and there's no telling if the next black Charger with a loud exhaust you see is just an average mopar enthusiast or the infamous Blackout Charger. And remember, if you ever want to be uncatchable and not risk prison time, it's just easier to sign up for Surfshark. So look in the description down below. Thanks Surfshark for sponsoring this video. It keeps the content free.